How's it going, everyone? Today is January 10th, 2020, Friday night. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I hope everyone will have a great weekend. As you know, currently there are over 1 million voters heading to the poll stations in Taiwan to cast their votes in the presidential election there. Last night, I made a video predicting the result of this presidential election in Taiwan, in which I said that I would expect the incumbent president Tsai Ing-wen will win the election by a margin between 5 to 10%. I would like to say that I do hope personally her major component Han Kuo-yu will win the election. However, I have to accept the reality that the incumbent president Tsai Ing-wen still has an edge in the polls and probably also in reality. However, finger crossed, and let's hope that Han Kuo-yu can make a great upset in the election history of Taiwan. Today, I will continue to make my last English video, the third video of the topic gerrymandering. As you know, in my previous two English videos, we can all find that compared with my other Chinese videos, there are much fewer audiences and there are much lower number of views who watched my English videos. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of this English video series, I will try to finish this topic within 3 English videos, and it is a pledge I made not only to you guys but also to myself. So today, I think it's my time to finish my last English video. We know that the gerrymandering is a practice of setting the district boundaries in order to favor a political party for the election results. In my second video, I gave you some pretty simple and straightforward graphs to show that even each voter cast the same vote. By setting different boundaries of the districts, the election results can be changed. So today, I'm going to give you a little more background using the real examples. First, let me give you an example of a person who is very famous for the practice of gerrymandering. His name is Thomas Hofeller. He's a political strategist in the Republican Party, and he's well known for his practicing of gerrymandering in favor of the Republican Party in the past few decades. Regarding to the redistricting, Thomas Hofeller once said, "Redistricting is like an election in reverse. It's a great event. Usually, the voters get to pick the politicians. In redistricting, the politicians get to pick the voters." Thomas Hofeller's fingerprints is all over the country. After he died in the year of 2018, his daughter found that there are tons of files he made when he was alive for the redistricting. There are so many maps all over the country. His daughter handed those documents to the activist. His daughter thought that Thomas Hofeller left those important documents to her intentionally. Why? Because Thomas Hofeller is very well known for his cautious in handling those important documents, and he was very careful that those documents will not be disclosed to be anyone else. His daughter said that actually he had years to delete those files. Any day he could have plugged it into the computer and delete. He also had many opportunities to put it in a place that I never would have had any chance to access. His daughter thought that before his father died, Thomas Hofeller really leave those important files for her to discover those someday in the future, so that the truth can be revealed to the rest of the world. Thomas Hafler's work on gerrymandering has been done for many years and in many places all over the country. However, his masterpiece is in the state of North Carolina. And traditionally, the voters in North Carolina is nearly half-half for the Republicans and the Democrats. Sometimes it's more likely that the Republican voters has a very slight edge, like 50%, and the Democrat voters usually has over 40%. So based on the popular vote of those two major parties, we would expect that the seats should be around the same ratio, like 50% to 50%, or a little over 50% to a little over 40%. However, the seats percentage is quite different from the popular vote percentage ratio. Here I can show you some numbers. Like in the most recent 2018 midterm election, the election results in some states also show that gerrymandering played a very vital role to determine the election results. For example, in the state of North Carolina, the Republican voters 50% compared with the Democrat voters of 48%. However, the Republican Party won nearly 77% of the seats, while the Democrats only won 23% of the seats. And another example is in the state of Ohio, where the Republican voters around 52% compared with the 47% of the Democrats voters. However, the Republican Party, they won 75% of the seats, and the Democratic Party only won 25%. So this has very big discrepancy between the popular vote ratio and the seats ratio. So what happened? That is exactly because of the gerrymandering. You know, before the midterm election in 2018, in early that year, there are some lawsuits regarding the gerrymandering. Both the United States Supreme Court and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, they determined that the Republican parties in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, they had committed the unconstitutional partisan gerrymandering in order to win in the elections. Another famous example for the effect of gerrymandering is very familiar to us. That was the Hong Kong local election last year in November 2019. As you know, the two big alliances of the political parties in Hong Kong, one is the pro-Beijing camp and the other is the pro-democracy camp. In the election, in the popular vote, the pro-democracy camp garnered 57% of the votes compared with the pro-Beijing camp, who got 40% of the votes. However, as we all know, the result was strikingly different. The pro-democracy camp won around 87% of the seats, while the pro-Beijing camp only won merely 13% of the total seats. The striking difference between the popular vote ratio and the seats ratio perfectly represent the practice of gerrymandering in Hong Kong. This is something that we rarely mention in the media. However, I think it's a great opportunity for me to bring this issue up in this video, because there were so many partisan as well as bipartisan gerrymandering in the elections. So in the past few years, there are many cases brought up to the courts in the United States. including both the state level courts as well as the Supreme Courts, the federal level courts. And one of the milestone case, the landmark case, was happened last year, 2018, just half a year ago in July. And in that case, the Supreme Court ruled a 5-4 majority opinion. You know, the 9 Supreme Court judges, they were nominated by the different presidents who represented the different political parties. Currently, out of the 9 Supreme Court judges, there are 5 nominated by the Republican presidents, and there are 4 nominated by the Democratic presidents. So there was a very clear partisan and ideological line. And in this case, it was exactly determined by those 5 conservative judges versus those 4 liberal judges. So that was why we got a 5-4 margin. In the majority opinion, the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice John Roberts, he wrote that partisan gerrymandering claims present political questions beyond the reach of the federal courts, meaning that we know that you guys are doing the gerrymandering to try to change the election results. You guys are manipulating the elections. This is a very bad intention. However, this issue is not our business. Our Supreme Court, our federal courts, we cannot get involved in those cases and we cannot make a decision. At the same time, however, fortunately, they made it possible that the lower level courts, like the state courts, they can still judge those cases. Although the Supreme Court's decision strongly favored the Republican Party, there's still some hope left for the Democrats to continue to fight in the state level courts. And we have to remember that it is pretty interesting. That is one fundamental flaw in the election system of the Western democracy. And I hope that someday maybe those politicians and those judges, they can do something to try their best to prevent or reduce the effect of gerrymandering, to make the elections to be more fair and more transparent to the voters. So that's all I want to say in this topic, gerrymandering, and I really appreciate your patience watching all my 3 English videos on this topic. So thank you very much, and let's wait just for a few more hours for the result of the Taiwan presidential election, and then I will give you the most updated results in another Chinese video regarding my prediction. Thank you so much, and everyone, I hope you have a great weekend. See you soon.